Good day to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to talk a little bit about our story so far in terms of enabling innovation at the IMF. I'm going to give a short presentation and then I look forward to your questions. So just a little bit about the IMF. Before I joined the IMF, actually, I had a lot of misconceptions about the IMF, so it's useful just to clarify. So the IMF ultimately was created during the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1944, to promote global economic financial stability. And it does this in three main ways for its 189 member countries. So the first is surveillance, which is primarily sort of an annual health check almost for each of the member countries, where we provide policy advice and look into sort of economic conditions of the country. The second is as a lender of last resort in many cases for countries where they have balance of payment issues or other problems and want to borrow from the IMF to help them get back to their stability. And the third is capacity development, which is now roughly 1/3 of the fund's work, which is basically sharing knowledge and advice and guidance and providing training, as well as peer learning across the members of the fund. There are about 2,700 plus staff working at the IMF, most in Washington, circa 150 nationalities, and you can see a few more of the stats about the IMF. So why innovation at the fund? So this was really a push, and still is, by our managing director, Christine Lagarde. Her view, which I'm sure is common across many international organizations, she talks about a kind of new multilateralism that is required, given that the world is changing so rapidly and there are so many new kind of interconnections between these changes. So one way she wants to try and let's say, support the IMF in changing and remaining agile and relevant within this changing world is through supporting a culture of innovation. And we opened the Innovation Lab in September 2017 to help support this and be this kind of anchor of cultural change within the organization. So it's both a physical space, but more importantly, a strategy for the fund. And we launched our innovation strategy, or the MD launched our innovation strategy at our internal innovation festival last September. The strategy is at its heart fairly simple, really, which is to foster this culture inside, a mindset, a set of behaviors within our staff that is conducive to innovation, collaboration, problem solving in support of the fund's mission. So the idea being that with this mindset and tools, we will be better at delivering our core activities and supporting our members. So what's our approach? So first of all, even though we have an innovation lab and I have a very small innovation unit, this is really a strategy that is owned and delivered by the organization. So the strategy itself is sponsored by our management, by our managing director. It's delivered many ways through our departments and staff, as well as and supported by our central innovation unit. We also have an informal network of sort of ambassadors for innovation called our innovation team, I-Team, and then a more formal nominated group of champions and sponsors across all departments. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then clearly we have a lot of internal collaborators, communities of practice, partners, projects, etc. And then hopefully more and more external collaborators as well, including with our member country authorities. The innovation unit itself is part of the managing director's office. So I report to the MD. Basically it's myself and one other person that really are the core of the unit. So it's lean and mean, or that's why we want to keep it. And then we have I've set it up so that we have a very flexible kind of rotational set of staff that come in and come out of the iLab to provide sort of learning, new perspectives, connections, etc. So I have an economist that's come from one of our departments. He's been with the iLab since its beginning for a year and a half, but soon he'll be going back, and another economist will come, etc. We also sometimes hire project-based interns or fellows to help with specific expertise when required. So the innovation unit itself, this central unit that I manage, I like to think of it doing 3 core things. Again, none of these are revolutionary, but this is how we've created our strategy or formulated our strategy. So the first is what I call an enabler role. So this is really raising awareness and building capacity amongst staff of how innovation can help in your day-to-day work. The second middle piece is the accelerator piece, which actually the WFP gave us a lot of really helpful advice in building. So this is really a structured program to go from an idea or a problem, a solution to a problem, to actually a proof of concept through a sort of mentoring, funding, and bootcamp sort of support program. The third, the catalyst role, is more of a way of injecting new ideas or new thoughts or new methodologies into the institution and seeing, if there are ways that requires the fund to change in some way. I'll explain a little bit more about that. So in terms of initiatives, what have we been doing? So we focused a lot in the first year, and I still do actually, on enabling activities. So some examples are here. So the first is I worked with our HR department to insert a full day sort of immersive hands-on program into all our leadership training for our staff. So we run around 12 sessions per year of cohorts of 25 staff at mid-level, emerging level, mid-level, first level leadership levels. And we bring them into our iLab, and they basically do a sort of compressed boot camp within a day. They get given a real fund problem, they work on it as teams of 5, and they're taken through a kind of problem discovery, solution discovery, and experiment design type of lean startup methodology, basically. With the idea that then they can, once they know this approach, they can apply it to their day-to-day work. We've also created this champions network. So basically a network of sponsors, which is the more senior staff member, and then champions within each department. And they basically are driving innovation within their department, both sort of from the center to the department, but also from the department to the organization. That's proven a very powerful resource. iTime is something we've just introduced as a new policy where staff can apply for up to 20% of their work time to be dedicated to a particular innovation project for a limited period of time. This was really in response to many staff saying that they would love to work on innovation, but it's hard to sort of dedicate time within the day to do this or to be recognized for it. So we're experimenting with this at the moment. We'll have to see how this goes. And then we've created a sort of online portal really for all our innovation ideas and proposals and so on, which is a useful resource. We've run a lot of different events and workshops. I'm sure this is sort of common, but everything from small scale brainstorming strategy type of sessions in the iLab to sort of TEDx style or, sort of more one-on-one style discussions on things that are related to innovation. We also run, in terms of intrapreneurship, challenges and this accelerator program that I mentioned earlier. These are some examples of some of the topics. So we did one on artificial intelligence, knowledge sharing within the organization, what we called our problem solving challenge, which was sourcing problems through our champions network that are really relevant to departments right now, and then getting all staff across the organization to think of proposed solutions and then develop those. We're in the middle of planning 2 more right now. One is on using big data, new data sources or techniques to improve our surveillance work. The second is one on fighting corruption with open data, which is something we'd like to do with partners, other international organizations or CSOs, etc., and authorities. These are just some examples of some of the proof of concept projects that we are supporting. So a lot of these are related to data just because that's a lot of our day-to-day work is looking at analytical work like this. So using Swift or transactional data for nowcasting, using vessel shipping data to look at global trade intelligence. We created a learning coin, a kind of blockchain crypto asset, between us and the World Bank, where you can earn real coins on a blockchain by completing certain learning exercises. It's a very interesting concept, and you can see some other examples there. The last thing I mentioned in terms of the strategy was this catalyst idea. We had our first catalyst event on pandemics, actually, and antimicrobial resistance. So we had a full day where we invited people from the WHO, the Global Fund, etc., sort of exposed our staff to all the latest thinking, and then had an internal debate with a group of staff about, well, given all this information, how might that affect the role of the fund, or how should the fund respond to a situation like a pandemic? And then we end up as a group putting forward recommendations to our leadership. So this is the sort of process we wanted to develop. Next time it could be on a totally different topic, say, 21st century education, or fighting climate change in a particular situation, or something like that. So in terms of lessons learned, so far anyway, clearly it's a real game changer having an active strategic sponsor. So in our case, having the managing director both create this initiative and then support it actively has made an enormous difference. The formulation of the strategy took a long time. It took almost a year, actually, because we did it in a highly consultative way. So we had focus groups and task forces, and all the departments were involved in reviewing it, etc. But it did create significant buy-in and ownership over time. So I think that was well worth it. Something that I hadn't thought about at the beginning, but is proving to be a real asset, is if you can create the iLab or the innovation program as a sort of neutral platform, then it can, I found that departments find it very attractive to use it as a place to congregate or put forward particular problems that then doesn't have any kind of political baggage associated to it, or the particular department or something like that. I talked a little bit about the informal and formal networks of staff. This has been really critical in sort of creating the momentum within the organization, and has also just been a great way for staff that are really interested to get much more involved than they would through their normal day job. In our case anyway, we don't have a particular agenda as a innovation lab. So we're a kind of neutral platform, as I mentioned. In that sense, we're a demand-driven organization. So really the topics, the problems come from the organization, and we just provide the platform for sort of finding potential solutions. And I think that's really helped focus the work where it's needed most, and also avoids the question of, well, why are you working on that when what we really need help with is this or something like that. Last point is, and I'm not saying we've succeeded at this, but I'm trying to use every opportunity to build this sort of innovation culture into our core work and processes. So, for instance, we've adapted our competency framework, our performance frameworks, the leadership development program, our kind of review processes for work. If you can include within that this sort of element of innovation or more agile ways of working, that's how I believe will really mainstream it. So that was the end of my presentation, and happy to take questions. Thank you.